Hello and welcome back to Made Possible by Pop Culture, the podcast. I am Danielle Turchiano, your host and producer, and this is still season 2 of the podcast where I invite guests to come and share stories from past and present pop culture that have greatly shaped them. Now, you're all here on a very good day, and if you're watching on YouTube, you already know why. Hint, not so subtle plug to watch this on YouTube. It's because of my shirt, Friendsgiving. That's why we're here. It is Thanksgiving, and we're here to talk about the Friends Thanksgiving episodes. I will say right up front, I've never really liked this holiday. I'm not a full Chandler in that my parents never told me they were getting divorced during a holiday meal. But like Chandler, I don't like any of the traditional holiday foods at this day. So what I do to celebrate, if you can even call it a celebration, is I put on these Friends episodes every year, binge watch them start to finish. There are 10 seasons of Friends, but really only 9 true Thanksgiving episodes. A few people consider another episode in that 10th season to count. I personally don't. We can get into that later. But I wanted to get into that with some guests. These are all people who love Friends, grew up on Friends, and have very strong feelings about these episodes. So we're going to introduce them in a second, and then we're going to talk about which is their favorite. And are we going to agree? Probably not. So I don't know, buckle up if you have any mashed potatoes, mac and cheese, leftover pie, maybe eat your feelings as we discuss which is the best Friends Thanksgiving episode. All right. Well, we have to say a very big thank you first up right at the top to all of my guests for joining, because for anyone who's listened to my last roundtable, it got a little unhinged, and I can't say this one won't as well, but they're sticking with us. So I'm going to go around and introduce everybody. So I don't know who at home knows who everybody is yet. So first we have Emily Longeretta. She's a senior editor at Variety. Fun fact, I worked in that role before she joined, and I want to say this up front as well. We're both huge Friends fans, but both of us joined too late to be the author of the article that ranks these episodes on the website.
Yes, exactly. I don't know how that exists on Variety, and neither of us are the author, but
That's why I'm glad you're here, because I was like, we can take umbrage with that article specifically, in addition to this general chat.
Exactly.
Elaine Low, she currently writes for The Ankler. She also used to work with me at Variety, fun fact.
Yeah, hey.
And she authored a very cool feature there about people who learned English from watching Friends. So I think you should all check that out. Just Google it. I don't remember the exact title or the exact URL. I don't expect you do either.
No, I'm like, is it the one where people learned English from Friends? I don't know if it was something like that.
It
got
should have
nominated
been
for an LA Press Club Award,
Nice.
hilariously.
I mean, honestly, it's a very good article, like very well written, very well researched and sourced, but also like such an interesting, I think, topic, because we all talk about like we grew up on Friends, but it takes a different meaning in that world. And I mean, Ben knows this because Ben Travers is the next guest. He was on Made Possible by Pop Culture before, so he is our returning guest. Thank you for that. Deputy editor and critic at IndieWire. So he came on previously to talk about Chandler, specifically his influence on him as he's younger. Check out that article, that episode if you haven't already. Ben, have you written about Friends? I feel like you have, and I couldn't find the articles.
I mean, who can find anything now that Google is just a mess, like just a big pot of sludge? I believe I have, but probably not as much as my passion would dictate. I do love Elaine's article though, and I was really like happy to have it as kind of a resource to put more positivity out in the world regarding Friends. I feel like a lot of people are coming after Friends these days. It's too popular, so then people come after it, and we need good things to say about it beyond just, hey, it's a really funny, beautiful show. But yeah, good article.
I mean, we're not going to come. I don't think we're going to come after Friends. I don't know. We'll see, I guess, how this conversation goes. So
we have no plans to, but make no promises.
Right? I mean, because it is like we're talking Thanksgiving episode specifically. We are talking about which one we picked as, I'm going to use the word best. I don't know if you all agree with me. Do you want to use the word favorite instead?
I would probably say favorite.
Nobody likes this choice. We don't.
I would probably say favorite, but there's very specific context into why I chose the episode I chose. So it's possibly unique to me. If it has to be best, I'll defend it. I don't care.
Yes,
Okay.
I think it's so funny when Danielle, when you sent the emails kind of being like, well, Emily named these 4 episodes. I was like,
Well, I just didn't want you to feel like you couldn't have a pick, but then
No,
I was like,
it's
someone
so
else might
hard.
also want one of these, so like fight amongst yourselves.
Totally. It's so hard to be like best or favorite, so I mean, it's a good problem to have for a show when that has that many good episodes around Thanksgiving.
That's true. Okay, that said, I do want to start this. We're going to go around. Everyone's going to say which one they picked, and they're going to give a little bit of a reason as to why. I can jump in with any context if we need, like historical context. Um, After that person lists why, we can all jump around and ask questions and make comments. But we are going to do this chronologically. So that being said, Emily, you're in the hot seat because yours is a season 4 episode that was 1997, the one with Chandler in a box. And as you did say, you listed multiple. So this was not your only choice, but
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about why ultimately this became your choice.
You know what's funny is after Matthew Perry died, I went back and watched some of my favorite Matthew Perry episodes, and this was one immediately I watched. And I think that was ultimately why I chose this one, because his acting ability and the ability to provoke emotion with a finger out of a hole in a box is the wildest thing I've ever seen. I think that the overall feel of that episode with Chandler and Joey's friendship, which is easily one of the best relationships across the entire series, was so incredible, but also all of the side stories also were strong. I think there's a lot of episodes that I love that have because of one story, where this one, it was every single story, like Rachel proving she returns gifts, but not the meaningful ones, and Michael Vertan coming in as Richard's son. I mean, I'm here for Michael Vertan any day, so great. And then also Monica calling out all of them for judging her love life. I literally wrote down the quote because it's one of my favorite quotes of all time on Friends. Something Friends does is they don't always reference back to things in the past. I've talked a lot about this,
Yeah.
that it's something that a lot of older shows don't do as much. And I think that this line where she says, like, judge all you want, but married a lesbian, left a man at an altar, fell in love with a gay ice dancer, threw a girl's wooden leg in the fire, lives in a box, is my favorite, like one of my all-time favorite lines on Friends. So those were many reasons, but I think that kind of sums up my love for the one with Chandler in a box.
No, I think those are all good reasons. I should have maybe backed up and started with the context for when you saw this episode for the first time, in terms of were you watching it live? And also, how many times have you seen it since?
I will say I was not watching it live because I was a little young to be, and if I was, I definitely wasn't understanding it. And also what's weird, I think that I chose this episode is that I am one of the few that I actually prefer the later seasons of Friends.
No, I do too.
Later seasons, yeah. And so, but I think I probably rewatched this one for like when Matthew Perry died would probably be the last time I rewatched it and really paid attention to it. I fall asleep to the show every night, so it's probably been on my TV before that, or after that. But yeah, I think I've seen it, I would say at least 10 times, because I mean, to give an example, I didn't have to rewatch it for this podcast to be able to list what I just listed. So clearly I've watched it a few times before that.
Actually, that brings up a good question. How many of you actually rewatched any Friends for this podcast? Because I didn't expect that to be
I
necessary.
rewatched almost all the Thanksgiving episodes. I did my homework.
Wait,
Ooh.
just the ones we said we were going to talk about, or literally all?
And some of the others. I watched the one with the football one, which spoiler, I don't think anyone here picked, but I
No.
was like, just to be safe, I want to rewatch all of them. And incidentally, my 9-year-old watched Friends for the first time with me when I was rewatching these episodes, and he's now instantly become a super fan.
Awesome.
So congratulations, Danielle.
No, I mean he should just be on with us. Which one was his favorite? I mean, that's the new generation. That's the next piece of this.
Well, his favorite one so far isn't a Thanksgiving one. It's the one with the holiday armadillo.
Fair.
Because we went on to the Christmas ones after.
Mm.
Wait, were you in like a holiday specific mood, or were you watching them in chronological order, and like that's the last Thanksgiving episode you watched then led you to the armadillo?
Well, then he was like, what else can we watch? And I was like, oh, we're done. I just wanted to watch the Thanksgiving ones because of this podcast. And he was like, no, I want to watch some more. So I was like, okay, let's find some good ones. And the holiday
Love
armadillo
that.
one is the one that came to mind.
The reason I ask is because I 100%, if I had kids, would just make them start from the beginning. I would be like, you're going to sit down, you're going to watch the pilot. There's 234 episodes. You'll be fine. You'll
Yeah.
enjoy it.
Yeah, there's a lot of explaining when you jump around. I'm like, oh, well, Ross and Rachel are together in this one. But then we jump around. That's like, no, they're not together in this one. Now Monica and Chandler are married in this one.
Exactly.
There's so
Exactly.
much context to add if you
I
say that
know.
they're not together. It's like, in what way are they not together? Because my goodness, how much time do you have?
So, does anybody want to? I don't want to make us turn this into a mean podcast, but not a full rebuttal. But does anybody have any reasons why they like Chandler in a Box, but feel like they don't like it enough to call it number one?
Hmm.
I don't care about Michael Vartan, so that's probably a deficit specific to
Rude.
me and why it didn't rank as highly as it may have for other people. But otherwise, not really. No, I'm very jealous of Elaine. I wish I had the time to watch the Friends episodes. I've been watching so many screeners for so many other things, specifically Yellowstone for God knows what reason. I mean, work is always the reason, but I don't remember any like Friends Thanksgiving episodes that I thought were bad. I don't remember being disappointed by a
Yeah.
Friends Thanksgiving episode, especially to the point where I would besmirch someone's choice of it being
No,
their favorite or the best. And I haven't read the variety list in a while, so I don't know where the Thanksgiving episodes rank, like what
sure.
they picked as the best, but I would dread that task. I would
I'll be
be,
honest. I'm not trying to
be
crap all
tough.
over that article because I didn't author it, so I don't feel like it's fair to be like this other person's opinion is wrong. Also, the other person's opinion, I think it's just listed as staff. So I think it's like a hodgepodge. I don't necessarily whatever. I don't we don't have to go off of that article. I don't work there anymore. A million
Emily, you
websites
have
have
to go
written.
find out who wrote this. You have to hold
I'm
them
about to look in
accountable.
the
We
I'm,
need,
a-
Literally
I'm about to
Googling
look in
this
the back
now.
end and
Also,
see.
a million different outlets have written the same article and ranked them moderately the same. So there is no, I think you're right. I don't think there is a wrong answer. I just was curious. So we can move on to my pick because I was the second chronological one. Mine was the one with all the Thanksgivings, or alternately the one with the Thanksgiving flashbacks. That's how they labeled it on Max, even though I don't believe that's the real title. Whatever. That was season 5. So it breaks format from the other Thanksgiving episodes, which is actually one of the reasons I liked it because we're only halfway through the series at this point, but they already felt like they needed to reinvigorate it a little bit. And I say that because it's President's Day Thanksgiving when the episode starts, but they've already eaten their meal. And what the episode really is all of the, flashbacks of like, what was your worst Thanksgiving? And so the real meat and potatoes of the story is in flashback. I picked this because Monica and Chandler are my favorite couple on the show. In this, actually, let me back up. They're one of my favorite couples on TV of all time. So in this episode, they're together, but they're still mostly keeping it a secret. And when they're talking about bad Thanksgivings, Rachel is like, I know Monica's. And so they flash back to this one where she overhears Chandler calling her fat. Monica overhears Chandler calling her fat. And then she's like, no, that can't be it. And they flash back to another one where Monica's now gotten thin and she's trying to get back at Chandler, and she ends up cutting off part of his toe because she drops a knife in the kitchen and his shoes are made of wicker. There's a lot of things that you, as Ben pointed out, like people are, kind of crapping on Friends from time to time. And one of the things they crap on is Monica in a fat suit, aka Fat Monica. I see the reasons. Um, I get the reasons. I'm not trying to say that was a perfect choice. But what I love about this episode is getting those nuggets of like the history that all of these characters have. And some of it is just for comedic effect, like Chandler and Ross's bad fashion choices in the past. And some of it is much more nuanced and important, like the evolution of Monica and Chandler's relationship, because there were so many episodes in Present Friends where they would make jokes where Chandler would be like, what if I was your boyfriend? And she was always like, eh. But in this one, you see that she kind of does have a crush on him back then. So I love that one. I also will say I kind of love this one because there's not a lot of Rachel and Ross as like a couple or kind of at all. And I really don't like Ross. I've said this before. I find him to be a sociopath. In another show, he is a serial killer. He is the villain. So like I like that they sidelined him a lot.
Now, is this
Sorry to
in
David Schwimmer.
retrospect? Is this in retrospect that you
No.
don't like Ross, or even
No,
then?
I never liked Ross. Yeah, I
Okay.
never liked Ross and Rachel. Like when she got off the plane, not to derail this, but when she got off the plane, I was actively upset. Like I knew from a storytelling standpoint, like yeah, it's Ross and Rachel. They're going to put them together in the end. But I was actively upset, and I started watching Friends when I was 10 because it came on in 1994. And so that meant that it ended when I was about 20. I was in college. So like from those formative years, I was watching that relationship. And I did not like it at all at any point through. So anyway, that's why I chose mine in like a nutshell. Also, just like the turkey on the head. That's the one with the turkey on the head.
It will
Classic.
never not be funny.
Yeah.
It will never not be funny.
Yeah.
I
And
I
it is
also
also the one
appreciate.
where Chandler says, I love you for the first time, even though he tries to walk it back. Sorry, was that what you were going to say?
No, no, no. I think that's a great moment to highlight. I was just going to say that any Thanksgiving episode, and there's a few of them that includes Monica and Ross's parents, especially Jack Geller, is excellent because Elliot Gould popping in and doing his thing is just one of the low key highlights of Friends over the years.
Agree. Does anyone want to go the opposite way and be like, no, you're wrong?
Okay, I don't think you're wrong because this is one of my favorite episodes of all time, to be honest, for the same reasons that you just listed, especially the flashback. I just love when they flash back, regardless of problematic issues now. My one issue with it is because Chandler was my favorite character from the beginning. He really angered me this episode because he after she told the him calling her fat story, and then the toe story, him in real time then got so mad at her and so mad and so poor me, I hate Thanksgiving, which is of course part of Chandler's character, that he like stormed out. And to me, it was like, yes, she cut your toe off, which is really awful. You calling her fat is way worse. So the fact that he was angry at her makes me very angry. And it's the only, honestly, I have very few complaints about Chandler through the whole series. And that's one that I'm like, ugh. But I also give it a pass because he's always had bad Thanksgivings. And
No, I hear that. I mean, I don't disagree that that was a very bad moment for Chandler, but I also just felt like we saw so much of their relationship where like he was the immature one and like there were a lot of steps backward for him, and I saw that as one of those steps backward, and I feel like because I let so many of the other ones go as like, well, he's growing through the relationship.
totally.
Like this was a bad moment, but then like it turned into a really nice moment. So I don't know. I think maybe I was softer on it. Also, wait, I do want to point out one other thing that I forgot to say. Douglas Looper is the unsung hero of Friends. I don't know if everybody knows who he is at home. I will say he's this ultimately a background extra that was in a multitude of episodes. But what I love about it is that he's in this episode as one of the paramedics when Chandler has his toe issue in the hospital, which means that he hasn't aged in how many years? Because then you also see him in Central Perk in the background. You see him as the vampire in Buffet Vampire Lair, the Ursula's porn movie. You see him as a partner of a woman about to give birth when Rachel's about to give birth. It's fascinating. And like, you're not going to notice that on your first watch. You're going to notice it on your 100th watch, but I've watched this 100 times.
Yeah, that is a deep cut.
Thank
That's
you.
like encyclopedic knowledge.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I had to look up his name at one point I didn't know his name the whole time. But at one point I looked it up and I was like, I want that guy to come on this podcast at some point and be like, let's talk about this.
Truly. His story's
Danielle,
really fascinating.
I'm always happy to be here, but this is exactly why I wanted to come on the Friends podcast with you because I do not have this level of deep encyclopedic franchise fandom, but I love every little morsel I can get of it because it just makes it that much more enriching, and you are an incredible source. Thank you.
Thank you, I guess. I don't think this is a skill, but okay. Although it did come in handy for writing a lot of lists at various times because people thought I spent a lot of time on them. And I was like, no, wrote it from memory. Let's move on. All right. The one where Ross got high is the next pick from season 6. And that is, anyone want to do a drum roll? I mean, it's 50-50. It's Elaine.
It's a classic episode. That's from 1999. It's the one that starts off with Monica talking to Chandler about having everybody over for Thanksgiving, and she casually drops that, oh, and by the way, my parents don't know that you've moved in and we're together. And the whole episode revolves around essentially trying to keep this knowledge from them, and also the revelation that the reason why the Geller parents don't like Chandler is that they thought that Chandler had gotten high in college when it was actually him covering for Ross when Ross had gotten high the one time. And it's also one with the famous trifle that Rachel makes, where she's got 2 pages of the cookbook stuck together. So she's she's really nervous about making this dessert. She wants it to be perfect. And so she's got the custard layer and the banana layer and then the beef and the peas and onions. And because Joey and Ross desperately want to go to Janine's model Thanksgiving uptown, try to convince everybody to not let Rachel know that that's not how the trifle's supposed to be made, and to say it's delicious. And it all leads up to what's the mom, what's Monica
Judy?
and what's it, Judy, yes, Judy Geller, with this wonderful like dispelling of everybody's of everybody's bad takes there, of just like, Joey, if you want to go, go. Rachel, the trifle was not good. Just these great line reads from her, and it's just such a classic episode, and one where, like, it's just got that classic like farce element to it, of like, Ross taking Rachel out to the hallway so that Joey can try and tell everyone to, like, pretend to like Rachel's trifle, and Rachel thinks for a moment that Ross wants to get back together with her and all of that. So I thought that was a solid pick for front runner there.
And are you using the word best or are you using the word favorite?
Say favorite. I don't know about best. I'm not
I'm
going to put
just
my
asking.
reputation on the line like that, Danielle.
Well, because you phrased it in a way that I do feel like works for best. Like, you use the word
I think
classic a
one
lot. You
could
brought up the
argue.
farce.
One could argue, yeah.
Okay. And go back, tell everybody when the first time you saw this was, if you were watching live, that sort of thing. And like,
I'm
is this the
trying to
one you watched the
remember.
most?
So my family moved to this country when I was 11 in the late 90s. So like it was like peak Friends, right? So I feel like that definitely probably permeated my intro to America experience then. But I don't know how much of it I actually watched live. I remember watching a lot of it later on TBS or whatever. So that's probably how I got most of my Friends education.
Okay. Fair enough. Is this the one that you watched the most, you feel like, when you rewatch them?
Of the Thanksgiving
Yeah.
episodes,
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe. But the one with all the Thanksgivings is also, which by the way was very hard to find, you're right, on Max, because I kept looking up the title that you'd given us, and then I was like, wait a minute, where it's not, but it looks like the one with the turkey on the head, right? I don't know why they renamed it on Max.
Yeah, I don't either. And then I was like, I'm just going to list both of the titles here, A, so that people can find it, and B, in case there's like a reason that we don't call it the other one anymore that I'm unaware of. So good luck. Get it together, Warner Brothers. Does anybody have any nitpicks with this one?
I don't have any nitpicks, but I did want to say that I do think there's a very strong argument for this being the best. And the dynamic that you talked about at the beginning, where Monica surprises Chandler with the information that like the folks don't know about like their relationship and what's going on with it. Um, I saw that at such a young age that it became, and it was such a good hook. Like the whole episode has so many little secrets going on that are like kind of a big deal, but not such a serious secret that like when they're exposed, it's going to spoil the fun. So like that really helps kind of play out a lot of the quote unquote drama within this great episode of a very funny sitcom. But when I saw that happen, it was so formative that now when I see it happening in other shows, when other shows do the same thing, when like somebody shows
Yep.
up at the door right before a party or an event, and they say, "Hey, just by the way, this major thing you thought we'd told everybody, we didn't, I haven't told anybody, so shut your mouth." I get angry and excited at the same time because part of me is like, you're stealing this from Friends, and part of me is like, ooh, Friends. So
Mm.
I just I think there's a lot of really classic bits, like you said, within this episode. The Joey defending the trifle when he decides he likes it is a quote that I have like adapted into so many different things over the years that I don't even remember the original thing that he says. I just remember like beef, good,
Mm-hmm.
jam,
There we
good,
go.
like and then like the stretching out of the last one. So yeah, this is fantastic episode. I do love it. I don't think I have any nitpicks. It's really,
Yeah,
really strong.
Ben, you
I have
also mentioned Elliot Gould earlier, and that's also why this one is
Oh.
my one of my
Yeah.
faves. Because like any episode with Elliot Gould is just golden.
Yeah.
Is this the one where she had the dream? Phoebe had the dream
Yes.
about
I
him?
love
Okay.
Jack
Yeah, yeah.
Cousteau.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that was my that was what I was gonna call out was her being like all of a sudden out of nowhere, this man she's met multiple times, but because she had a dream about him, having this huge crush on him when he has to unbuckle his belt, and she's like, that would have killed. Like I just find that so hysterical and so perfect for Phoebe that the writing was just on the next level. And what you were saying earlier, that Judy's kind of rundown of listing all the things and kind of giving that quick answer was very similar to, I would say, what I brought up.
Yeah.
You know, listing all the things. It's something that Friends only really Friends does really well. We see it now more in TV, and it's the same kind of thing. Ben, I kind of like, you stole that from Friends, but I appreciate it. It's so well done. And I loved, Elaine, that you shout out that Ross takes Rachel in the hallway, and she's like, all he says is like, the holidays are among us. And she's like, it's just not the right time for us to get together. And it's just such a perfect way to remind the audience of Rachel's, and I say this with love because I love Rachel, but like that she is a self-centered person in general, and that this is just how she grew up, that she's like, oh, he's trying to get back together with me. It's just honestly genius. It's definitely like a top episode and in every way.
Yeah.
Oh, could I also tell you guys when I was Googling this just earlier today? Because I was like, is there anything that I've forgotten that I should mention about it? I came across a bunch of like stories from like Good Housekeeping and other places that are like
Oh no.
selling a HelloFresh Rachel
Yes.
Green's trifle kit
I made it.
for
I was
Thanksgiving.
just gonna say I saw Emily get one. I don't know
got
if you
one
got
and
it
I
for
made it.
free because you have
Oh my
that
gosh,
trade
tell us.
privilege, but I was just like, oh, I missed the trade privilege for that reason.
Guys, it was so easy. Honestly, this is not a HelloFresh ad.
But
And it
it's
was so easy. And the trifle part was really good. I'm not a shepherd's pie girl, but the
oh,
trifle,
you had to make both.
you could make both. I
Oh.
made
Didn't they give you a dish that's like separated
a
or
dish
something?
that's separated that I've now used as a really great holiday decor. So like amazing. I've done this crazy thing with like snow. But besides the point, they gave you a dish that was separated and then the recipes for both meals. I took some of the shepherd's pie recipe and used it for other things because I'm not a shepherd's pie girl. The trifle was so good. The custard, top notch.
Yeah, trifles are great. I will say I made a trifle. I used to host Friendsgivings in college because I had my own apartment, like non-campus apartment. And I made a trifle one year because I was inspired by this episode. Obviously, maybe not obviously, but I should say I didn't put meat in it. I made like an actual trifle off of a recipe I found like
So not a
online.
faithful reproduction then.
No, but now that you say that, I have this old Friends cookbook that was released in the 90s. I think it was released before this episode came out, so I don't think there's a trifle in it, but then they released a second cookbook later, and I think there is a trifle recipe in that one. I feel like I should try that this year. But I was gonna say, like, I do love this episode because if it inspired me to cook, that's a huge step.
Me too.
I mean, I will say the only, I hate to even say this, but like the only nitpick I have with this episode is the reference to Janine. I really did not love that character or that arc. And so like I almost forgot about her until Elaine, you pointed out like, oh, they want to leave. Like that's why Joey and Ross are like speeding through it because they want to go to her dinner. Now she's not in the episode, so that made me feel better. But I was like, can
She
we
appears for like one quick scene just to be like, my dancer friends and I
Oh,
are
she
having
does. That is
Thanksgiving,
that.
very briefly.
Well,
Yes.
But I'll be honest, until I watched that, I'd forgotten about Janine as well. Until I then watched, and I don't know if this was the same season, but the one with the routine,
Yeah.
which is also a Janine related
Yeah.
episode.
But she doesn't stick around long. She's in that
No.
part.
But I appreciate that she was the reason why that whole episode happened.
True.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. We have one more pick to discuss, and then we have some just general Friends topics, I think. Ben has the last chronological episode with season eight's The One with the Rumor.
Yeah, so the one with the rumor, honestly, if they were gonna rename episodes for Max or anything, it should probably be this one because the thing you don't want to remember about the one with the rumor is the rumor because the rumor is, let's just say, outdated. It's not
Hmm.
a good thing. It doesn't put anybody in the right light, let alone like whether you're thinking of them in high school or in their current adult forms. So I don't like that aspect of it. Also, again, just to get it out there before we get too deep into the episode, it should be called the one with Brad Pitt. Obviously, they're not going to call it the one with Brad Pitt because Brad Pitt is an actor and they don't name the episodes after the actors. So it'd be the one with Will, I believe.
Yeah, and who's going to
Um,
remember Will? No one. We all just call
right.
him Brad Pitt.
Yeah, it's
I
Brad
mean,
Pitt.
I kind of remember, I'm a little impressed with myself right now for remembering his name was Will, and maybe it's just because Brad Pitt has like that kind of effect on everyone, but I digress. There's a lot of issues within this episode that I feel like are top of mind for people who don't like Friends or who often criticize Friends, including Fat Monica, which comes back because Will is her former fat friend who is now thin and extremely attractive, obviously. Obviously, the rumor itself is a problem. I think the celebrity aspect of like leaning so hard on Jennifer Aniston's then husband making a cameo as a movie star is also something that a lot of shows don't necessarily do that well or haven't done that well historically. But that's part of the reason that I wanted to choose this one. Part of the reason is because I think they did a great job using Brad Pitt. I think he's very funny. He's a very funny actor. And using him in this context where he kind of leans into this part and gets to have these kind of weird little dynamics with Ross and kind of like a confrontational dynamic with Joey and Chandler. He's obviously like old friends with Monica, but it builds up, like brings up these old issues that we then get to explore like new aspects of the characters that we'd never known before. Like anytime you kind of force them to talk about high school and force them to look at their past, it's usually pretty interesting. And especially by season eight, when we already love these people so much, any kind of like new historical background we get on them is usually like a nice little bonus piece of fun. So I do think it's a pretty well executed episode overall, and I do really love it. But the reason I chose it was purely sentimental, because it's the episode that I think about when I think about watching Friends live for the first time. I think I started watching Friends maybe in like season five or six live as opposed to like in reruns. Like I think I caught up on TBS or old DVDs or whatever it was until about that point. So this was well after that. But I remember being at family Thanksgiving the night this premiered and like my sister and my mom pulled me aside at some point and were like, we have to figure out how to get out of here so we can be home in time to watch Friends. Like tonight is the one with Brad Pitt. We've got to see the episode. We got to be home in time to like we got to watch it. And it was just that kind of like special moment that I just don't feel like we have anymore. Like obviously everything is either streaming or you can watch it later or you can record it. And ironically enough, I'm saying this after going like moving heaven and earth to watch Yellowstone last night because it's not available on streaming and it's not available the next day. And I had to figure out a way to watch it live to cover it. And I was not excited about this at all, but
Right.
I really miss those days. Like I loved that feeling that you had where you were with like your family or your friends and you wanted to get together to watch something and you had to do it at this time. So everyone had to figure out how to move their stuff around to be available for it. And then watching it live was pure joy. So that's why that was my pick for favorite, and probably
Favorite.
wouldn't
Okay.
argue it's the best.
Well, that was going to be my follow-up question. My other follow-up question, because you already kind of said like when you first saw it, but how many times do you feel like you've rewatched it? It sounds like it's not one that you rewatch a lot because it hasn't held up in the same way. Is that accurate? Or do you feel like because nostalgically you're so tied to it, you can rewatch it and still feel the way you used to feel, modern things aside?
I think I would be okay at rewatching it. I didn't unfortunately have time to rewatch it for this. I don't
Yeah.
avoid it. I definitely don't avoid it, and I've seen it. I mean, as many times as I've seen any of the other episodes. Whenever I watch Friends, I usually don't pick out like think of a single episode and go directly to it. I kind of just randomly start in like an area where I know like there's a good stretch of episodes that either I don't remember as well or are just, particularly sounding particularly good for whatever reason. I mean, I've seen it at least a dozen times, and I would watch it right now if I could. It's any one of them.
Ben, you talking about wanting to watch that live, like that episode is such a product of its time, for better or for worse, from being eventized TV, have to watch it the day of, to the big celebrity cameo, to the very problematic jokes, which I did not remember at all until I was rewatching it last week, again with my 9-year-old, and then having to be like, woof, how do we contextualize and explain a lot of these jokes? Like, of all the Thanksgiving episodes, that was the one that required a lot of like, let's ignore this piece of this because this is outdated and a little problematic. But yeah, that's it's just such a product of its time, that episode.
But I also feel like that's what I like about this episode. And I mean, arguably, all of these episodes that we've chosen, that eventized feel that you guys just talked about, like it was a thing you wanted to watch with other people, whether you had to watch it with other people or not. Like you wanted to have the conversation about the episode that you just saw, which I think makes it more special when it's a holiday episode, because that's supposed to be the point of holidays anyway. Like you're gathered with your family. You don't want to talk politics. So you could talk about this show that you just watched, and it's like a palate cleanser. Maybe not this particular episode right now, but in general, it's a palate cleanser. And it's funny because hearing you all talk about when I'm saying like how the rewatch factor, I feel like it sounds like I'm the only one that literally rewatches all of these every Thanksgiving. Is that true? Do any of you
All
do
of
that?
them? Do you have a
Yeah,
chronological
No, I don't
order?
watch all
in
of them.
chronological order.
Wow.
And this will get to we'll get to this in a minute, but like there are 10 seasons of Friends. I consider only 9 true Thanksgiving episodes. That season 2 episode that some people count as a Thanksgiving episode, I don't. So I don't
Which one is
include it in
that?
the one with the list. And they consider it the Thanksgiving episode because Monica's working on her mocklet recipes, and she's like, "What if mocklet's the Thanksgiving holiday or the Thanksgiving treat or whatever?" And I just don't count that because like there's nothing else about Thanksgiving. So when I do the binge on Thanksgiving Day, I don't cook, so I have lots of time. I do 9 episodes in chronological order. And fun fact, in the 90s, there was they would break out the episodes from Friends and do special DVD sets. So they have a DVD set with the one with all the Thanksgivings. It came out before the final ones, so it's not literally all of them, but it makes it a lot easier when you're like, I don't want to get up and change the DVD, or I don't want to hit the remote and like scan through the Max thing again. Like I'm sure there's a way on Max to make a playlist that I haven't figured out yet. But I do that literally every Thanksgiving, and it sounds like nobody else does. That's okay.
I will say, I think as much as this is, as we've all kind of spoken about and we can all agree on, problematic for many reasons, I would say this is the episode, I don't, maybe overall, but definitely the Thanksgiving episode that I've seen this many times, like more than any others.
Brad Pitt is very funny in it.
Brad Pitt is on another level. There is an acting ability that man has when he does comedy in this, that when he's mouthing "I hate you" and like pulling the berries off the wall, I could like have tears in my eyes every single time. And I think that a lot of this, because I love season 8, I think if you love a certain season, that's what I never really pick a certain episode, but I'll pick a season to put on. And then it's usually like this is one of my favorite seasons. So I think that's like, we also didn't talk about the fact that Ross like made out with his teacher, which
which is also somewhat problematic, but
Yeah.
that has come up a few times, like in the show. Like there was the librarian. There were a lot of people that this has come up, and I almost wonder if the writers forgot they did that more than once.
I feel like there were the most descriptors of the librarian in this episode.
Yes, so many descriptors. Like I could see this woman in my head, because of course this is also something that, again, in the 90s, on top of the tropes, it was like a lot of, they never had cut-ins where they showed. So it's like when you saw the yearbook, I was like, cut to it, and they don't, but it almost makes it better because they don't, because you imagine it perfectly in your mind.
Yeah, I agree. I will say,
Also, before we get too far away from it, I just want to say that I do love Ross. I cannot defend Ross as like a person who makes good decisions throughout Friends. He is often a monster person. The finale is forever kind of scarring in my mind for like kind of the little lack of context that they needed for Ross to be like, I would have moved to Paris for you too.
Hmm.
Like just have
Hmm.
him say that and things
Thank
would
you.
have been better. But David Schwimmer is, in my opinion, the most talented comedic actor in the show.
Mhm.
And the fact that he was able to kind of keep Ross afloat. I know everybody hates Ross, like to some
I
degree or
don't think
another,
everybody
but
does. That's my problem.
a lot of people
Go
don't
ahead.
like Ross, or a lot of people would say Ross is my least favorite friend. I
Mhm.
think without Schwimmer like playing him, it would have tanked the show.
Oh,
I
100%.
think that
Oh,
character could
easily.
have like just turned so many people away that it wouldn't be the phenomenon that it is today, let alone be as rewatchable as it is. And I do think episode 8, his interactions with Brad Pitt are really good examples of what Schwimmer can kind of bring to the character that makes you kind of sympathize with him in ways that maybe he doesn't deserve, but are so incredibly funny. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that because I love Schwimmer.
Yeah, and to be
I
fair,
agree.
I don't know that Ross would have been the Ross he was if David wasn't in the role, because to your point, I don't, with less nuance, the crazy is worse. Like Schwimmer was
Yeah,
able to keep the humor in the crazy, and it was like we laughed at it and like he tamped it down at times, and he was still a well-rounded person. But I feel like on paper, you can't hand that to someone else. So if somebody else was in that role, he would have just been written differently. I don't think they would have gone as
Yeah.
big in certain moments.
It's so
Which is,
funny
I
because I feel like Ross is my least favorite, but honestly, if I had to list like the funniest lines, some of them are delivered by Ross, and
yeah,
that's simply because of David Schwimmer.
yeah.
I often think of that episode late in the run when I think it's when Joey and Rachel tell Ross that they're like seeing each other, and Ross, gets really drunk on margaritas and is
Fajitas.
making the fajitas, and he has those lines where he's like
So
making them, and then
good.
like at one point he comes out because he's so drunk and he's carrying the fajitas in his bare
Mhm.
hands instead of using the trays. And like this is absurd behavior. Like there's nothing like realistic about this. It shouldn't work. It's like as written, you'd just like let that thing, you'd be like, we gotta figure out some new tactics here. This Nobody's gonna buy this. And Schwimmer sells it so hard, like
Mhm.
so completely that I bow down. I'm so impressed. And then I just feel guilty all over again because now this role has like made his career and also haunted him from doing the things that he's wanted to do
Right.
otherwise in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, which
I
I
think he's
think
a
he's
But
very
he's
good at.
he's done. It's not that he hasn't done anything else. I mean, I know he probably had to pivot more than he wanted to because of
Oh,
this. But I mean, he successfully pivoted. He's directed some really great stuff. I haven't seen any of the theater because I didn't live in the places, but he's always gotten really great reviews when he's done theater. Um, I know he's working on something right now that I don't think I'm allowed to talk about because I heard it off the
right,
record. So like I don't
right.
know what I'm allowed to say, but like he's, the one thing that I do love is that none of these people were pigeonholed as just these characters. They had different, obviously, tracks and success levels after Friends for a variety of reasons, but he had the range he had and has been able to do other things. I will, this is totally off topic, but still in keeping with the one with the rumor. My favorite, this is so out of left field. My favorite part of that was like Joey and the Thanksgiving pants. And the like, I'm gonna eat this whole turkey because I have to. And it's such an aside, but I just enjoyed that of like he's warming up his stomach with chips. Like, what? What is this logic?
so funny. It's so,
I
and like even the way that they sprinkle it in, like in the beginning, Phoebe brings over the pants for Rachel, like, here's my maternity clothes, and
Yep.
then for Joey to then put them on later, and Rachel would be like, you can keep
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
It's so funny.
Yes. All right, I do want to go back because I kept like bringing it up and then we didn't fully talk about it. The one with the list. Do any of you consider that a Thanksgiving
I have
episode?
no recollection of this episode,
Okay.
so you're gonna
Is it
have
with,
to
is it
refresh me.
Isabel Rossellini?
Um,
Like, is that the list?
what do you mean?
The list that Ross makes of the other, or is it the list
Oh,
about Rachel?
no, no, no. It's the one where Ross is making the pro and con
The
list
pros
about,
and cons
yeah,
list. Yeah.
Julie. Sorry, I was like, I blanked on Julie's name for a minute. It was like
Oh, that
Julie.
one.
Um,
But I
And
don't,
so,
that's insane that it's even a Thanksgiving episode. I completely
Yeah,
forgot.
I do not consider that a Thanksgiving episode.
okay. I mean, that was my question because it is on some people's lists when they want. I mean, to be fair, for just completion, I want to be able to be like, here are the 10 Thanksgiving episodes. There are 10 seasons, but I never feel comfortable including this one, partially because, like I said earlier, like there's no activity around a turkey. Like there's nothing, with the exception of Monica being like, I need to come up with recipes for this. I want to say, disease-ridden chocolate product. That's incorrect for a lot of reasons, but like the
It's
FDA
like
did
the
approve it.
non-FDA approved
Yeah.
synthetic chocolate or something.
Disease-ridden is strong. It's not, that's not the right language scientifically, but at one point he's like, "What are you allergic to?" And she's like, "Cat hair," and he takes it away. He's like, "Never mind, don't eat that." So, um, I don't count it. But I wanted to give you all the opportunity if you felt so inclined to defend it as a Thanksgiving episode.
No, I think the strength of the Thanksgiving episode is that they often get everybody in the same room. They bring the cast together and for an extended period of time, and then they create those kind of situations where they get to bounce off each other, and then it culminates in this kind of big statement, like we've mentioned before, whether it's Judy giving it or some of the other characters. Um, but I do think that's the credit of the Friends Thanksgiving episodes, especially in as it applies to kind of the real world. I mean, I grew up in the Midwest. Holidays were for family. I had a lot of friends who were like very specific, like on this day, like I'm not going to see you, I'm not going to talk to you. Like I know we're home from college or back from whatever, and we should get together when we can, but obviously not on this day because this day is for family. That's what holidays are for. And Friends, like almost accidentally, like really kind of emphasized to me that you can choose your family if you need to, and the people who you love and who are most important in your life are the ones you need to prioritize and see. And the episodes that do that are the Thanksgiving episodes, and I just think that's why that episode isn't really part of it for me. Like it doesn't really contribute to that idea, which I think was very important, not just for like the comedy, but for kind of the resonance. So
Very well said. I agree. Also, I like that you kind of perfectly set up some of my questions without intending to, because one of my questions
perfect.
was going to be, and we can get into this now, but what, if anything, do you feel like watching these Friends Thanksgiving episodes when you were still young and still kind of going to your family's Thanksgivings, but not being able to have a say in how they were? What did you take away from these episodes that you apply to your Thanksgivings now that you are adults and can design your own family events, if anything?
I'll go. I think that one of the ones that I I think of a lot is Rachel's other sister, the one with Rachel's other sister, which is
Mhm.
one of the ones I had considered doing.
I was going to say, you can also talk about the ones that you considered and chose not to if you want.
Is that
I
the
Yeah,
just
Christina
say that up
Applegate
front.
or the Reese Witherspoon
Christina
one?
Applegate,
Christina.
yeah.
Okay.
And I think that because my family is from different parts of the country and we all have a lot of different views on things, and a lot of the people I grew up with have different views than me. She is on such a different level, Christina Applegate, Rachel's sister, and they have some conversations that are really uncomfortable, and it becomes this like day that's not perfect at all. And obviously, Monica's dishes get broken, and there's all of these, these things that kind of fall apart. And I grew up in a family that had a very like, oh, Thanksgiving and Christmas have to be this specific holiday. Like we have to sit down for dinner at this time. We have to have this stuff. And it made me realize like, no, you don't. Like it's literally just about being with people you love, whoever they are. It doesn't matter if they're blood, doesn't matter if they're people you've known your whole life or for a year. Like literally doesn't matter. So even though it's not like directly a correlation, I think that's the one I think of the most that is like, we might not see eye to eye on things, but like we're family at the end of the day. And Rachel even says to her, like, you're fine, you're who you are, like this is what this is. So I'm not giving you my child, but here's what that's exactly like I think that is like a really, really good message to send overall.
Right. Okay. That's good. It's a good one.
I like that the Friends Thanksgiving episodes normalize chaos. Because thanks holidays can be really chaotic, and some people expect them to be very prim and proper. But none of the Friends Thanksgivings episodes, like nothing ever goes according to plan, and it's affirming in that way. It's like, okay, chaos is the norm. It's okay when you get this many people together, whether friends or family, in the same room for a big holiday.
Mm.
That's what's gonna happen.
I love
Okay,
that.
I
Yeah,
mean, that's fair. I will say, I mean, people who are watching this on YouTube, at the top of this episode, I stood up so you could see my full Geller Cup shirt. Now if you're just looking on YouTube, you just see the like ripped shirt, and it feels very much to me like the one with the late Thanksgiving where Joey rips Ross's pocket off to pretend they were mugged, and like we just look sloppy. And I'm like, you know what? We should be normalizing, like it doesn't need to be perfect, no matter how that is. Like whether that's perfect attire, perfect like china, perfect people, perfect meal, like it's going to be. I have a one side of my family is Italian, and so like they're very loud, and so I none of that seemed perfect to me as a kid anyway. So maybe it's also my own bias and my own projection. But I mean, I do agree with you that like it never felt chaotic to me when I was watching Friends because it just felt so normal for these six characters who had weird things happen every week. But then when you step back and you look at your own life and you're like, yeah, why are you slaving 6 hours over a turkey that like you may burn a little bit? We're still going to eat it. No one's going to care. Sorry, did I cut
yeah.
you off, Ben? I always do that. I didn't
No,
mean to.
no, you were great as always. I
Uh-huh.
was just going to kind of add to both of those ideas in that um kind of the thing that I appreciate most about the Friends Thanksgiving episodes that I apply is that they write off the day. Like the day is just for that. The day is not just the meal. It's not just showing up and sitting down and having like kind of a nice dinner and then getting up and leaving right away. It's so many of the episodes take place like leading up to the dinner or like big chunks of it are long after the dinner. So it's like this is what this is supposed to be. And I have a really hard time kind of shutting off and like getting away from like the checklist of things you have to get done. And I think anything kind of external that forces you to do that when you're surrounded by people you actually care about is such a good thing. And kind of, making it a little less formal and a little more chaotic is also good because then that lets you have like real conversations with people and really connect and really be in the moment. And like you just having the time to be there, I think is really, really important. So I think that's what I try to apply now for Thanksgiving. But honestly, every Thanksgiving seems different these days. It's very hard to hold on to a tradition, like one tradition after another. So just a reminder, really.
Well, you need a Monica. You need like the
I
anal
do.
retentive.
Yeah.
And then when Monica gets tired, you need the Phoebe to be like, well, you're never going to top what you did last year. So why even try? So then Monica gets competitive with herself.
Well, and
I
that's
used
kind
to
of
have a Joey who would knock on the door and be like, I need food, like feed me,
Oh,
like you have to do something, like we're having Thanksgiving together because we need all the food and this is important. And that actually worked in the same
really?
way. Like it was like, well, I can't work, I gotta feed this guy, so like I'm gonna spend the day kind of like cooking and
depending on
talking and whatever. So anyway, sorry, didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
that was very nice of you. I would not have answered my door. And also, like, I'm assuming this person is an adult because they live on
Oh
their
yeah.
own elsewhere. Like, get
Yeah.
your
Oh,
own
we knew
food
each other. Like we're friends. Like it
still.
was
I
fine, but it
mean,
was
I have friends that, like, if they came and knock, I'm not saying I have no friends, but like, if my friend randomly was like, feed me, I'd be like, what's wrong with you? Well,
I
maybe
mean, he'd give
DoorDash
me
didn't exist when you were having this conversation, but
true.
McDonald's fast food existed. So,
He'd give me a heads up. It wasn't like he'd show up on Thanksgiving where when I couldn't shop, he'd be like, he'd let me know it was coming, and then I'm like, okay, I'll be ready. Here we go. Let's do it.
You had a little lead time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think
Yeah.
I think it was also what you just brought up, the one with the late Thanksgivings.
hmm.
I think it was also a really good point was again Monica being like, okay, I have to compete with myself. I have to make this perfect and making the perfect plates. And then ultimately at the end, after everything gets destroyed, her and Chandler finding out that they're getting a baby, and then the whole group hugging, minus Joey who's covered in food, but them all realizing like at the end of the day, here's what it's about.
Yeah.
And it's like that's exactly what Friends did so well. Because at the end of the day, like all that mattered was like the relationship that held these people together. And like at the holidays, again, we've said it a bunch of times, that's what matters. Like
Yeah.
whether it's family or friends or whatever, it's like that's what the big picture is. And they
Yeah.
always do a good job of bringing that back around.
I mean, that is the better example, I think, of that, of being like, look at this beautiful moment. It is forwarding their lives, it is forwarding the story in the show. But whenever I think of that moment for a Thanksgiving episode, I think of the one with all the football where they're actually split, where it's Monica and Ross left together holding the stupid ball on the field and everybody else enjoying their meal, being like, when they're hungry enough, they will come in, because it spoke so much to like the family within the family in a weird way, like the traditional brother sister family within this group of friends, and how even though they're adults and now they actively are friends in a way that they weren't when they were kids, they still have unresolved stuff. And what is Thanksgiving? Maybe again, this is my own projection, but what is Thanksgiving without unresolved stuff coming its way out in front of whoever?
It's funny you mentioned that, because I was just gonna say, in light of you wearing your Geller Cup shirt, that we should talk about the one with all the football, because it's the second episode that I can think of. The other one being the one where Ross got high, where there's an intense Monica Ross rivalry happening. In the one where Ross got high, where they start blurting out each other's secrets to their parents in an effort to cover their own asses. And then the one with the football where they're the two most competitive people left. But I also like the one with the football because it's so, again, like a product of its time. It's so analog. It's like, what are we going to do while we're waiting for the turkey? Let's go outside and touch some grass, like let's go outside and like play football instead of like staring at all our phones. And I love it for that reason.
Yeah. I mean, I also think like for a lot of people, maybe Ben, because of where you grew up, like it feels like that is common that you would go outside and be playing football. I grew up in New York where Friends took place in New York, and I remember watching that episode being like, where'd they find that patch of area unless you're going to take the subway to Central Park, there's not many places you can play football.
It was also snowing mostly on Thanksgiving when we were growing up in New York.
That's fair. I don't be honest, I don't have a full memory of that time in my life. I don't know why. That's for a therapist to figure out. But yeah, the weather was also bad. So I guess if you're running around, you don't feel it as much. Everyone always says if you're active, it's not that cold. But for me, like just the idea of being like, yeah, it would take so long to go find a place to even play this football game. And by the time you get there, you have to turn around and come back because your turkey is done.
Yeah. I think there is a lot of also like love for football. Like my family's always football is a part of our Thanksgiving Day plans. So like whoever's playing, what time it is, like it's like going to be the Cowboys, what time are they at? Like that's always been a part of it, which I think is another reason why this episode resonates with so many people.
Yeah. Although that's also in the one with the rumor,
of course,
when Phoebe and Chandler are like pretending to care about football. That to me was like, oh, that's something I would have done.
Totally.
Because I don't care, but I don't want to help in the kitchen and the parade's over. So now what?
Yeah.
Yeah, the one with the football was like dialed in to my family specifically because that is like the activity that we do like a lot of weekends in the fall and the spring. We'd go outside and just the four of us would play football. And definitely on Thanksgiving when we were waiting for food to cook, we'd go outside and play football. I grew up in the country, so it was very easy for it to be right there. So when I first watched that episode, I never thought about like the fact that they were in a city and it would be hard for them to go anywhere. So it felt like a nice concession for, the people outside of big urban areas. But yeah, now that I'm in New York, that's the first thing that comes to mind. So many things shift with friends depending on where you live. And I never care about the discussions about like, well, they couldn't afford that apartment. They addressed that. It's fine. I don't mind any of those kind of criticisms. I think they're kind of boring. But I do appreciate that depending on where you live, you see kind of their choices and where like how often they see each other and how close they are and how easy it is to get from X, Y to Z. Like it all changes depending on your experience, which I think is a good thing. And that applies to the Thanksgiving episodes too. I honestly don't know where like Monica and like Jack and Judy live. Like where are they compared to
Long Island?
They're in Long, but like how far out are they? Like how long is that trip?
We don't know.
It seems like it's just like this.
Their wedding anniversary party was in Massapequa.
Mm-hmm.
So which is so
pretty
funny.
far.
They were like, oh, we're driving. And it was like, well,
are you taking a cab to Massapequa? So when you want to talk about the money, that's where I was like, rent control exists, but the cab cost to Massapequa.
Like, you just spent hundreds of dollars on a cab.
I mean, again, to be fair, this was like before Uber, before Lyft. Like you did what you had to do.
Take the
They
train.
probably should have rented a car. Oh yeah, you could take a train. I don't remember the public transit. I moved before I needed to worry about taking trains that far out.
Okay, yeah,
Because I did have family on Long Island, but like we would drive. Like we had a car for part of my childhood, so my dad would just drive us out. And sorry, that was my little dog.
In my 5 years, I had a car when I lived on Long Island to get around Long Island.
Sure.
But I never drove into the city. I always took
Right.
the
It's like, where are you going to park? And that's why when Monica inherited the Porsche, I was like, really? Because where does she keep it?
right in the garage that she talks about one time. I was like, that must be so much money.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And like, you know, that we saw enough storylines with them driving it that I feel like, okay, about the fact that it was a plot point. Like, it's not like, you know, Judy Winslow who went upstairs and then just never came back down. Like the car had places in the story, but it bothered me because I was like, those garages are expensive. Then to drive it around the city, to even park it to go to like a dinner, you're basically putting it back in one of those garages. Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Can we also touch on the one with Chandler doesn't like dogs?
Yes, I was going to say, if anybody wants to talk about another episode that either you considered bringing up, it is your favorite / best, or just in general, we can talk about it. Why not? We can talk about all of them. I feel like we pretty much have talked about all of them, but go ahead with Chandler doesn't like dogs because that one hurts me.
I find it so funny that none of them can name 50 states.
Oh.
And Ross doing that and not letting himself eat until then, and then coming in the middle of the night at the very end and being like, and still having Nevada twice, just makes me so happy because Ross is so like, I'm the smartest person alive, and still can't do it. So that's, for me, Chandler not liking dogs totally adds up and doesn't even upset me because it just makes sense. So
seems very on brand.
Oh, it's on brand, except there is a line when Monica and Chandler were planning their wedding, and they were talking about like, well, what would we spend this money on if we didn't spend it on the wedding? And they were like, he was listing about like the kids, and they would go to college, and then we'd have like a little cat door, and she says, well, by cat you meant dog, and he says, yes, of course. And I'm like, there's no inclination you don't like dogs, Chandler. Like, to me, that was
cat, and he was just saying dog to make her happy.
I know, but to me, I was like, continuity wise, if they had thought that through, continuity wise, I feel like there should have been a little bit more of a connection. Like, it's not the worst continuity error in the world.
There's a lot of continuity.
It's not Douglas Looper being a time traveler, but I will say that always bugged me when we got to that Chandler doesn't like dogs. I did like that they then followed the thread through the end of Friends when then like Mike and Phoebe were getting married and he was like afraid of the dog. Fine.
I also thought it was really cute that Joey was the only one that knew he didn't like dogs. It was like, this is such a thing that like, it's like his best friend knows. He's like, don't say it, don't say it. Like, that was just so cute. I also just ignore the Tag storyline, even though I low-key liked Tag, even though that was so problematic because he was his boss.
Well, I was just never into Tag.
Yeah, me either. But I wasn't.
All right, this golden retriever of a man is cute, but what else is he bringing to the table as a character here?
I appreciate
nothing, but that was the point.
Yeah, I appreciate it because they made that once she turned 30, being like, oh, this guy's so much fun and so cute, but like realistically, this doesn't make any sense going forward. I mean, also making 30 be like old is a whole
right, mind-boggling.
I
don't know.
Really
I said too,
establishing like a crush and then just like building up to the crush. So you got all the excitement of like that initial thing, and then being like, oh, now that we have it, it doesn't work. We're gonna move on. It's like, yeah, we really like the crush. Like that's the fun part of it.
Yeah.
Like when you know it's not a serious relationship. Like she's not gonna marry Tag. Like no one ever thought that was gonna be the thing. So like we get to enjoy like the little like, oh well, she likes him and this is exciting, and then it's gonna go away. We know it'll go away and it'll be fine.
I mean, I don't know. Her and Dylan McDermott could have had a future if he
Dermot Mulroney.
Dermot Mulroney?
Yeah.
This is
I know. It's Dylan McDermott. We all do it. But yes, the funny thing is, I thought you were gonna say Joshua. I just blanked on his name for a second, but I thought you were going to say Joshua because everything you were just talking about, Ben, with the crush, like that's how I felt about the Joshua story. And then they repeated it with Tag. And I wasn't mad that they repeated it because the characters were so different. But at the same time, like it to me, because I already hated Ross and Rachel, I was very much like, oh, all you're doing is showing us people she can't be with because they're like
Right.
lame. And I'm like, I don't. Ross is also lame. Like this isn't fair. Give her someone who's not lame, please.
Yeah.
Wait, refresh me. Who's Joshua? Why do I not
Tate
remember this
Donovan.
character?
Tate Donovan.
So
Oh,
Jennifer Aniston was
God.
dating Tate Donovan at the time, and then he came in as like a Bloomingdale's client who like needed all new wardrobe because he was getting divorced and his wife like took all his clothes or
he was
whatever.
kind of a blip though, right? Like, was he?
Oh,
Why am I not
I
recalling any of
mean,
these
they all
episodes?
were kind of flips. I think I that imprinted on me, that relationship, because the like speaking of the crush, like the things that Rachel was doing when she had a crush were so childish because she was
Insane.
chasing someone for it felt like for the first time. It felt like she always, and the character talked about how like guys
never
always
had anyone
call
else.
her and like she never has this problem of like not getting dates, but in this case she liked him
Well, I think
and
they
he
had to speed
struggled.
that up because Tate Donovan and Jennifer Aniston, like you said, they were dating at the
Yeah.
time, but they broke up by the time he
Yeah.
actually started filming. So the arc was supposed to be longer, and then they were like, "No, you gotta end it." He was because they both were like, "We don't want to do it." And
I
Tate
had
is
no
talking, I'm
idea.
not saying
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The more you
I didn't
know.
know
Like,
that.
I had no idea until now.
Danielle and I coming up with the random trivia.
I mean, listen, I still think it worked. Like, I don't know that it
Yeah.
should have gone on longer.
No, I was ready for it to wrap up. After she was in her like nightie with his parents, I was like, no, we got it.
Well, I don't know if they would have done that if they intended for it to go on long. That's the one thing I do wonder because, like, the way they broke up with like him being,
Well, she was like,
it
let's
was,
get married.
yeah, he was like so like he was so commitment phobic because he had just gotten divorced, if I'm remembering correctly. But
Yeah.
she was like so obsessed with getting married because Ross and Emily were engaged, and it was
Right.
like chasing, we're right here, we're in the same place type of thing,
Yeah.
which I guess maybe they still would have done that with her because of the Ross and Emily story. I don't know. I also thought that this is totally off topic of Thanksgiving, but like the Ross and Emily story was so rushed. Talk about rushed. And then
Oh,
like
I
they
like
couldn't even
can't
get
watch.
her back at the end to finish because she was pregnant. And so they shot all that stuff separately. And I'm like, why? You could have just like had her get hit by a bus at that point. Like that would have been more
Dark.
realistic than her standing in front of a green screen. Like I'm
Oh,
They should have done a
painful.
Seinfeld thing, like with Susan and the
the
stamp licking
envelopes.
offer that way.
I mean, maybe. I do like murder. I did send a note about a comedy yesterday that was like, I really did enjoy it, but I thought there'd be more murder and I wanted more murder. And you guys probably all know
Out
it.
of context, Danielle quotes.
Well, I
Yeah, I
think
was
you
just gonna
all know
say
because you get
name of the
screeners,
podcast.
but the audience who is listening to this show hasn't come out yet, so I don't know what I'm allowed to say, but it will be out in mid-December, and I think after you all see it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Anyway,
I can't wait to watch shows with this in the back of my head, being like, is this the one where Daniel wanted more murder?
always. I mean, that's always. Does anybody want to talk about any last Friends Thanksgiving episodes slash moments slash do you want to play which character am I? Not overall, during Friends Thanksgivings, the episodes you've seen them, you know who acts how on Thanksgiving. Who do you feel like you relate to most in those environments?
Monica,
Oh God, that was so
100%
fast.
Monica.
Okay, that's upsetting how fast that was. Okay, good.
All the food has to be ready in a certain way. All the things have to be prepared. I mean, Danielle, you know this about me from when we worked together. I need things to be organized. I've deeply always related to Monica, also especially because of the hyper competitiveness.
Okay. I didn't think organized and Monica's like obsessive need to control were necessarily synonymous. So I'm glad that you clarified that a little bit because I was starting to worry for a
I
second.
mean, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
Okay. Anybody else?
I would say for me it would be Chandler, which is a weird thing, but because as much as although I do understand and follow football very closely, so that's I guess the one part, but I love the parade. He loves to watch the parade. That's a big one for me. And then I don't want to be in the kitchen, so I will do anything that I can do to not be in the kitchen. And yeah, I just want to have fun and like will help, but I can't cook. So like, yeah, put me on cranberry duty because it's the easiest thing possible.
I honestly think I'm probably Monica too. I do like cooking, so like I enjoy like that aspect of it, and I am very organized, so like having something to do while I'm like spending time with people is very helpful as opposed to like all the men just avoid doing anything. They just want to sit there and wait for dinner or watch sports or whatever it is or watch the parade, which I don't like. I don't like parades. So
What?
Hot
There's a
take.
parade right now, like
Well, that
outside this
doesn't count.
building.
Live parades.
So mad when I
not
heard about
When
it.
I
parade,
lived
that's
in
what
New
I mean.
York, I was the same way. I lived in New York during the Yankees winning the World Series, and it was I said this on a previous episode, bane of my existence because it would mess up my like route to school. And I was just like, I can't with you crazy drunk idiots. I need to get somewhere.
No, I want to watch a parade inside on my couch in my
Yeah.
pajamas. Not
Yeah, like I was never the kid who was going to the Macy's parade live in New York, even though I could because I lived there. I was like, I'm going to sit here where it's warm and I have snacks. And I mean, if you're standing on the parade route, you have one very specific view. If you're at home watching the cameras cutting between different views, it's much better.
Yes.
So
I
the one
guess,
where
but
underdog gets away, does that rate for anyone?
so that's the only time I was ever excited about a parade. I was like, oh yeah, if you got to rush up to the roof and see the balloon like drifting off into the sky,
Totally.
that would be worth seeing. But otherwise, I
Be
don't care.
cool.
So
I mean, it's actually a hazard. There was a year where some one of the balloons deflated on some people. I can't remember. It was like the Seinfeld episode. It was when Mr. Pitt is under Woody the Woodpecker. I mean, I like the one where Underdog got away simply because it was the first one, and it was like the start. It was the start of this what became a tradition. And I liked the Monica cooking all of the different potatoes to appease her friends. I think that is the one where I was like, oh, I'm the Chandler in this situation, which by the way, I think it's very funny that we're only Monica's or Chandlers in this chat. But to be fair, if you look at Thanksgiving episodes, I also think like the Monicas and the Chandlers are the more defined archetypes in the Thanksgiving episodes. Because that episode, I watched it when it came out. And I was like, grilled cheese is an option. Why are my parents force feeding me turkey? And so I, from that moment, was like, I will not eat this turkey. You can make it for yourselves, but I will not eat this turkey. Like, I'll make something else.
I meant to say that. I also don't really like Thanksgiving food.
Yeah.
I know that's like not a great take, but it's how I feel.
I don't think there's anything wrong.
Thanksgiving food, like the turkey, it's hard to get turkey right. It's always like overdone.
Yeah, like dry.
dry.
I don't like
it dries
gravy.
out pretty quick.
And I don't like stuffing. It's just a whole thing.
Yeah,
But I do think that's another reason I'm closer to the Monica because I was always very happy. Like some of my friends developed, dietary restrictions as they got older, and the people who knew them longer would get really upset because they'd be like, "Listen, stop making things without gluten. Like I know he says he's got a gluten allergy, but let's not futz with everything. Like let's just give us the good food." And I'm like, "No, no, no. I'm gonna make it. It'll be fine. Everybody will enjoy it." And like those kept adding up as the years went by. There'd be like stuff where you couldn't have cheese, you couldn't have gluten, you couldn't have like X, Y, and Z. And I was always very happy to accommodate those things. I'm like,
yeah,
I'll
because
try.
you don't
Who
want
cares?
someone
Let's
to
figure it out.
die at your
I mean,
table.
yeah, usually.
Making potatoes
Thanksgiving.
Making potatoes 6 different ways is definitely like I can relate to that. The people pleasing and the bending over backwards to make sure everybody's happy.
I mean, I don't do it for people pleasing, but like the first Thanksgiving I hosted in college, I was like, I'm going to do the Monica 3 kinds of potatoes just for fun. Again, inspired me to cook sort of. I mean, I reheated stuff. They were like instant mashed potatoes and like frozen tater tots, but still. But that being said, as much as I said I love murder, I didn't mean like at your Thanksgiving table. So I'm glad that you
That's a different kind
accommodated.
of show.
Yeah, I was like, I'm glad you
I think they would have
accommodated them.
survived. I think they would have lived. I think they just might have
Listen,
been a little uncomfortable. And that's why my
allergies are
friends were like,
real.
don't worry about it. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I don't want to risk it. I'm not here to endorse anybody being like, I'll just give them gluten. I don't know what can happen.
It'll be fine.
Yeah, like I will say I do like we used to when I was a kid for Thanksgiving, we always had crescent rolls and they just came out of the tube, but it was the only time of year my parents would make them and I loved them. And then I will say that now as an adult, I'm like, it's not that special. I can make them whenever I want. So I am on the hunt, actively on the hunt for anybody listening who wants to send me ideas. I am looking for something special for Thanksgiving that is not traditional Thanksgiving food that I can incorporate into what I do. Because I've kind of gone back and forth through the years with making like a loaded mac and cheese or a lasagna, some sort of definite like noodle thing. But I'm looking for something else to try as well.
I should send you a corn casserole recipe. It is delicious. It's always the hit.
Corn.
Grilled. You
Sounds
don't like
good.
I don't, so you don't know me that well. I don't eat vegetables.
Oh,
Yeah, I maybe should have prefaced that for everybody else that I just said send me ideas. I don't eat vegetables. Like
think
I'll
I
eat it if
remember-
it's like an element in something else. Like I'll eat spinach dip, or I will eat like that's
But
probably a
you
bad
don't
example.
even eat like a fruit in something. Like I think I remember
No,
once
I
was
started
coming
eating
to
some fruit.
Oh,
I
okay,
have
'cause
started
once
it.
I
You're
was
right.
remember once when I came into the newsroom and I was like, oh, I made like this like cranberry bar or something like that. And you were like, I don't, and I was like, it's a dessert, Danielle. And you
I
were
was
like,
like,
I
no,
don't
it's
eat
not.
fruit
It's
in
a
my dessert.
fruit.
No, that's a fruit pass.
Did you work with me whenever I would come back from Disneyland, I would have one of those chocolate covered caramel apples.
Yes.
And
And you
that
were
was
like,
my
that's the only
apple for the
way
year or
you'll
for the
eat the
6
an
months.
apple.
Because
Yeah.
yeah, that's how I would eat my fruit, was going to Disneyland. Although I did find that there is a candy shop in my adjacent neighborhood that will do them. So they're not as fancy, but I eat apples more now, is my point. So
Would you do a
all of
chocolate
that is
dipped
to
banana
say,
or
would you?
chocolate dipped strawberry?
I don't do
You
bananas.
wouldn't do like an
Strawberry.
edible arrangements type
Oh
thing?
God, no.
Oh, okay.
Thank
Do
you,
you
but
not
no.
Duly
like
noted.
do you
But
not
my
like
listen,
heated fruit? Like are you like on the Mike Sure train where you're like, I don't like
I
any
don't like
like baked
fruit,
fruit?
so I don't
Okay.
imagine I would like heated fruit. I do like the interior of an apple pie. I'll heat that. Like I'll slice an apple pie and heat up a slice. This has gotten way off topic.
I love
I,
this.
I am the Chandler
Very
though. Like
interesting.
I
Yeah.
would, if you gave me a grilled cheese and a bag of Funyuns, I'd be fine. Like that is I probably shouldn't eat Funyuns at my age because like acid reflux, but that
Okay,
is
I
Gotta live
just
a little
tried the
on
ramen
Thanksgiving.
flavored Funyuns. This is way off track now, but I just tried ramen flavored Funyuns and they're fine.
I
If
didn't
you
know that
wanted to add
existed.
that to your repertoire.
Yeah, I'll give it a
Let's
shot. I didn't know that
that's not a
existed.
vegetable, so we just find a recipe that
This has been a
incorporates it, and
journey.
that's the new thing to
I
add to the
mean,
Thanksgiving.
all those like not salads that people would make that would have like jello in them or like
Oh yeah.
marshmallows. Like that's the level of salad I'll eat.
Ambrose salad, is that what that's
Yeah, although
called?
I think those have sweet potatoes. I don't like sweet potatoes. Anyway,
Just the jello and the marshmallows. Got it.
You
Got
need
it.
to have a
yes,
list. Like we
honestly,
need a
just the
list of the things that
marshmallow.
you're not gonna eat. It's
Just the marshmallow.
substantial.
Maybe I'm just gonna do an all dessert Thanksgiving this year.
Those are
Actually
good.
sounds
Those
good.
are
I
fun.
love
Yeah.
that. I love that.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming on. If you want to leave any Thanksgiving ideas before we go, please feel free. Drop your recommendation for our viewers at home.
I'm gonna stick with corn casserole. Everyone should make some corn casserole. It's so easy. It's like 4 ingredients. I don't cook at all. I'm a very bad cook. I enjoy it, but I'm very bad at it. And so that's the only thing I can do, and it's always a hit. I bring it everywhere.
I
Okay.
gotta get the recipe for that. I love
Yeah.
corn.
I'll send it your way.
I'm very big on cranberry related things this time of year. I will get fresh cranberries from the grocery store and make cranberry jam. And then I will use that cranberry jam either as a sauce for the turkey and whatever, or I'll put it in between a crumble and make a cranberry bar.
You
It's the
are
only time of
Monica.
year you can get fresh cranberry, so you gotta
are
go hard
Monica.
on the cranberry. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
That's so good. I actually gave up on I've never been great at making things with like fresh cranberries, so I gave up this year and ordered the cranberry sauce from our favorite bakery out here. So I'm hoping like that'll tide us over. I love pies, so like I'm a big pie person. So I usually make a cherry or a blueberry pie and just kind of play around with the different crusts. But I will give a shout out to Minnesota hot dish. Anybody who's had a Minnesota hot dish, enjoy yourself.
Explain.
Yeah,
As
what is
I was
that?
taught, it's basically just a casserole, but it's very I would say unhealthy ingredients. Um
Where
as
were
I
you
was taught,
literally 30 seconds ago when I
well,
was like,
it does
hello?
include vegetables. It has
Oh,
a lot of potatoes in there. You can choose the type of potato that you want,
I mean,
but
I eat potatoes. Potatoes are a
the,
starch. Anyway, go
the
ahead.
recipe the recipe that I was taught involves getting one of those like Ore-Ida frozen bags of potatoes, whatever your preferred version is. You dump it in a casserole dish. You dump like sour cream and cheese, like lots and lots of cheese on top of it, and then kind of whatever little random other ingredients you want to add are totally fine. And then you just bake it and eat it. And I swear to you, like the first time I heard about this, I was just like, this sounds like the most disgusting thing you could put in front of me. I'm not gonna eat this. And I was watching them devour it on Thanksgiving. And I finally tried it, and ever since I've made it most Thanksgivings. It's very good. So
Honestly, that sounds perfect for
I
what I was
also want the
looking.
recipe.
Yeah.
I'll send it over.
Send it around.
You'll
Right.
be disgusted and
No, I
intrigued.
won't. That's the thing. I eat like I'm a child. I won't be disgusted. All right. Well, thank you all for coming on and talking Friends Thanksgivings. Hopefully, your Thanksgivings are a little less chaotic than those. And just a reminder that Friends, all 10 seasons, is streaming on Max. That means you can watch these Thanksgiving episodes or any episodes or all episodes at your leisure. And as a reminder, neither Max nor any service I may list here, when I tell you where to find the things discussed, are paying me in order to list them here. I'm just doing this so you have an easier time finding what we've discussed so that you can join in the conversation, join in the enjoyment of these products and these shows and these sometimes films and music and whatever we're talking about on any given episode. Once again, I'm Danielle Turchiano. This is made possible by Pop Culture, the Podcast Season 2. And if you stick around, we've got a few more episodes before the end of the year. So I hope you'll enjoy some holiday themed and some not holiday themed discussions coming up.